Welcome everybody to our weekly live stream. I'm Herbert with Brighter with Herbert. We've got Hans Nelson from his own YouTube channel called Hans C. Nelson, and we've got Brian White from Future Raza. Go check out the live stream that we're simulcasting everywhere. So today we're going to talk about Tesla stock. Obviously, we saw the production delivery numbers drop yesterday. We're going to talk about the good, we're going to talk about the bad and the ugly. Let's start with the ugly. So let's share this. I'll share the screen from Ross Gerber, and what he said. He came out swinging. He started saying things about Tesla, of course. He said this: for over a year, I've been warning about this potential reality. Now it's here. It's time for shareholders to assess the blame where due. The Tesla board should be replaced immediately with independent directors as required by law. This is what he said. Still blaming the board, still kind of going after saying the blame is Tesla. Tesla's, managing the company poorly. Omar replied saying, however bad the delivery numbers look, I'm certain they would have been worse with Ross on the board. But guys, remember Ross was trying to get on the board last year. He got pretty well embarrassed, kicked out of that whole process by Tesla. And he says, continue attacking Tesla since then. Here's Elon's reply. He's such an idiot that he can't even tell he's an idiot.
Well, that's true of all idiots. Yeah.
BYD sales dropped by 42% from last quarter. This was a tough quarter for everyone. So we did report this. The BYD themselves only sold 300,000 cars, battery electric vehicles in Q1. This was a massive drop from the Q4 numbers, a 42% drop from Q4. And Elon here is pointing out that this isn't just a Tesla issue where they fell by 9% year on year. And so anyways, let's start with the bad. I mean, what do you guys, what's your thoughts on this? Is this, was this a really bad quarter? It is, but him comparing it to BYD though, that some people are saying, hey, why are you comparing it to electric vehicles when the comparison should be against ICE vehicles?
So first of all, I'm going to have to push back. Ross is not ugly. We know that. We know that he's not ugly. Ross is just quite a character. To the claim, Omar's claim that things would have been worse this quarter if Ross was on the board, I disagree. I think things would have been better this quarter and worse for every quarter thereafter. The Wall Street guys love their short-term gains in ways that aren't always healthy. That's why you'll see sometimes these venture capitalists, vulture capitalists come in and clean things out rather than clean things up. So you've got too much hair gel for Ross, of course. So comparing it to BYD, we are comparing it to everything. The BYD number, their big drop is not including hybrids. If you include hybrids, they did sell 600,000 vehicles, but we need to stop counting those at some point, especially in China, where they will be gone by the end of the decade. So it is tough. So it's, there's room for improvement all around. I welcome other thoughts.
Yeah, let's welcome Matt Smith. Thank you so much, Matt. Really appreciate you joining us. You bring some, real credible opinions, and you are from Rebellionaire, so just an analyst there, or what do you call yourself? You're not an analyst.
I'm a VP technically, but really I just lead up research is my main role there. But
Okay.
do a lot with client relationships also. But yeah, thanks for having me on. Very excited. It's been a while since we've had a chance to talk, and I think there's no shortage of stuff to dive into. So happy to take it wherever this conversation goes.
We're talking about the Tesla investor, the good, the bad, and ugly. We're starting with the ugly, and we just shared Ross's comment about how he's warning about this potential reality. He's blaming the shareholders should assess the blame where due. He's blaming the Tesla board. And then, of course, you've got Elon saying he's such an idiot. He can't even tell he's an idiot. BYD sales dropped by 42% from last quarter. Tough quarter for everyone. So, Matt, what was your opinion of what happened in the quarter, and maybe opinion about what you just read there?
Yeah, so it was very obviously a bad quarter. I mean, I don't think I've seen a lot of people try to sugarcoat the quarter or to say that it's all logistics related, and just kind of ignoring Model Y inventory in particular that's built up. And I think as investors, we need to be kind of sober about, the good, the bad, and the ugly, like you said, Herbert. And this was a horrible quarter for demand in Q1. So, it's definitely bad. I think my question is, how does demand recover for the rest of the year? I mean, they were talking about lower demand, but I think there's a very real possibility that I love the love from Farzad. He did call me ugly yesterday, actually. But there's a very real risk, I think, that we're essentially flat on deliveries year over year. I just put out a tweet kind of about this, that
Yeah.
we might just do 1.8 million units again, basically flat volume growth, and we might have negative earnings growth just because you're lowering prices until your margin gets. So I just think investors need to be prepared for that. If that's the case, that does not disprove the thesis by any stretch. I think early days of the iPhone ramp, it was not just like this hockey stick line of adoption that went straight up. So what I've been trying to do in the last couple of weeks is just take a step back and what is the thesis overall? And I think the overall thesis is that EV adoption is going to continue in the medium and in the long term. There's still so much misinformation out there on people who just don't understand the benefits of this. That's just going to take time to play out, I think. And then the other thing is just costs are dropping for all EVs and Teslas in particular, and that's not happening for ICE vehicles. So if you're super concerned about Q1 and you can't stomach some of the volatility that we might well be in for, then this is not the right investment for you, probably. But if you're looking at the bigger picture and zooming out, I think that the long-term thesis is still very much intact, just on the EV adoption kind of side of things, where I think Tesla's definitely going to be doing 10 million a year at some point. I don't know when, and they probably need more models to get there. But then the automotive piece, I think that thesis is still intact, even though the demand has been very soft. And then the autonomy stuff has never looked better. I mean, the stuff that they're doing with FSD, I'm sure, Hans, I've seen a lot of your conversations on this lately, and there's no shortage of, or maybe not no shortage. This is such an exciting time on that front. This thesis is just starting to gain some very legitimate traction, and I'm extremely excited about that finally getting a little bit more credibility. So those are my kind of high level thoughts on the short, medium, and long term. But it's just it's very emotional as an investor. We've talked to a lot of clients lately who are having emotions one way or another, and I think a lot of what we try to do is just to try to be that steadying hand and help investors walk through that right now.
I really appreciate that, Matt. That was fantastic. Loved your opinion on that. So I want to stick with the ugly first, and then we'll get to the bad and then the good. So in terms of the ugly, right? This is Ross trying to say this is where the blame should go. So let's talk about that. Is there a blame that needs to be appropriately shared with anybody? Is it the board? Is it Elon? Is it, as Gary Black is blaming, he says that, Tesla was really dumb for not launching the Model 3 ahead of time. This is why we're here where we are now. Let's start with you, Hans. Is there a blame, and who's to be blamed for this bad quarter?
Well, I think that we need to, hold our horses a little bit on assessing exactly what went wrong with Q1. I think that, one of the areas, even though Matt said nice things about me towards the end, I have to disagree with some of his earlier points on inventory for the Model Y and some of the, everyone is jumping to the conclusion that there is a demand problem. But I really, I have to kind of defer to Jeff on logistics issues, and both on, the supply chain side of things, but then also the delivery logistics, because that's, something that he knows a lot more about than I do. But even from the work that I've done in manufacturing before, you have a very complicated set of things to manage when you're dealing with not only incoming materials that you're trying to manufacture, but then your finished goods that you're trying to deliver to a very complicated, especially in a direct to consumer model, to a very complex number of locations. And so, it seems credible what Jeff is saying about the fact that, if you have a disruption to your logistics network in the middle, or even just your production in the middle of a quarter, the likelihood that you can get all of the cars from where they are when they get produced 2 weeks later than normal to where they need to be and make that quarter end cutoff, that's really, really, really difficult. And it doesn't surprise me at all that we have seen, you know, our production so far ahead of deliveries for this quarter. Now, there is definitely, it seems like a secular demand issue for automotive in general. And I do think that that is something that is impacting the story. But I don't think that we can either assign it all of the delivery issues in Q1 that Tesla has seen to demand. And I don't think we can assign all of them to just logistics issues on getting them delivered either. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle. And I think that we'll get a lot more clarity on what that looks like in Q2. If we end up seeing production of 500,000 vehicles and deliveries of 500,000 vehicles, well, then you can say it was really all logistics. But then, if you've got a delta there again of somewhere in the neighborhood of 30,000 plus, which would kind of be more than normal, then you could say, okay, there really is more of a demand issue. So, I think that's where we're at as far as what we're seeing right now. And then, the question, who is to blame? Well, there's definitely some terrorists in Germany that we should at least assign some blame to. There's some instability in the Middle East that we should assign some blame to. There's also some, conservative strategy on Tesla's part not to have really pushed some of the supply chain stuff. There probably could have been some better contingency planning that could have been in place to handle some of the stuff for the Model 3 ramp. But other than that, I think that what we've seen throughout COVID is that Tesla is a very adaptable company, that whatever they have encountered this quarter that caused issues, I would really expect to see those issues solved in Q2. And then, I know that people love to basically, in a time when you have a disappointing result, it gives everyone an excuse to say that whatever it is that their own personal pet peeve is the cause. So, if your pet peeve is Elon's tweet, well, then Elon's tweet are the reason the deliveries are so low. Or if your pet peeve is,
advertising,
the board of
Matt
directors.
Smith. Blame Elon for refusing to advertise. This is Matt Smith's pet peeve. What do you think, Matt? But Matt, Tesla's been advertising. We just reported on the millions of dollars they're doing in cars.com and YouTube videos and all these areas. What, are you still upset?
So first of all, I want to piggyback on Hans's point. That is so well said. Like the people who didn't like his political tweets, 100%, like the reason that they're not selling cars is because like Elon's too political. And it's like everybody, just their preconceived notion is what's causing this. I wish they would go harder in the paint on some of the advertising, but I'm also like going to say that is definitely not the only issue going on here. Like it's also the Houthis, and it's also like the environmental terrorists, which attacking the EV companies is just insane. It's also demand. It's also Jay Powell. Like it's also I don't have a whole lot of criticism on the board, to be honest with you. Like I think just for optics sake, it would probably be good to get like Kimball off of there, and I think Robin Denholm probably just isn't doing much. So why are we giving her so many shares? Is kind of my point of view on that. But like I don't have a very strong opinion about either one of those. So like I definitely disagree with Ross here. I think the real answer is like multifaceted and nuanced, and all of these different issues have some small amount of the impact. But I mean, it's the reality is like it's a tough time for auto sales right now. Like auto sales across the board are down, and so like Tesla's like flat or down a bit in Q1, definitely down in Q1. But relative to the overall market, it's not like, the entire growth story is completely shattered now. So yeah, I think they could definitely be doing more to advertise. Like, I still run into people all the time that just have all these misperceptions about, Teslas, and I think it's just going to take some long, a long time to kind of address some of those misperceptions that people have around price, around safety, around, like range anxiety, all those things. I think there's just a lot that can be done more effectively than what Tesla's done so far. But I'm not going to say that's the only problem.
Well, so I would take the other perspective and say Elon's tweets are killing BYD's sales. Wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. So yes, the Q1 is seasonally the lowest, and we've seen a few manufacturers that are like, look, we're up 4%, 5, 6%. Right, but you're still so far below pre-pandemic levels that it's hilarious that you would even brag about this. I fell, but I got halfway back up. Look at me go. On the board of directors being independent, I don't really have an opinion. These are all very well qualified people. I've seen absolute fools say, these people are not qualified to run an ice cream store. My friend, look at their credentials. These are all perfectly qualified. If the concern is that they share the mission that Elon has set forth, that's part of the job of the board of directors, is to keep you moving in the same direction. So I'm not as concerned. If it's optics, I mean, I don't know, maybe get over it. There are a number of analysts who are saying the compact should have come first. The Cybertruck is the wrong product at the wrong time. Compact is where it should be. And if those people consider themselves professionals, ask them to show you them juggling some hatchets, because those are not professional analysts. Those are professional clowns. There is too many reasons that is apparently beyond their scope of understanding, even when it's laid out to them, why the compact couldn't come before the Cybertruck. They needed to get the 48-volt architecture figured out. They needed to get steer-by-wire figured out. Every vehicle has been a stepping stone along the path to the destination. And if Cybertruck should have been skipped, then surely Model Y, 3, X, and S should have been skipped as well. So that's nonsense. What I love seeing is all these brand new critics coming out of the woodwork saying, ah ha ha, look at how terrible things are, when they really aren't. This is not the end of the world. This is barely intermission. And some of these people try to claim credibility by saying, no, look, if you look back at my past, I was very hopeful and optimistic and shared a lot of very good news in the past, and it's only today that I'm sharing bad news. That, my friend, is what short sellers push. They want movement. They don't care if it goes up or down. They just want movement. So they'll push as far as they can, and then they'll push it back down and back up, and they go in cycles. We just happen to be in the cycle where it's easier to push it down. So yeah, all of that tells me I'm not super concerned. And a lot of the people posting, I've seen people say, well, yes, but look at the stock performance of a given company. That means they're better. My friend, if they're not moving fully towards electrification, they're about to be closed out of half the world's markets in the next 8 years. If that's the Motorola stock, Nokia stock, a lot of Blockbuster stock, they all did very well right up until they didn't. And if you couldn't see the writing on the wall, and those companies couldn't, they were in real trouble. And that's what we're seeing now.
So much of the commentary follows the stock price, which is kind of hilarious. And so I think there's a real temptation for people to just think my thesis is right or wrong based on, is the stock price going up or down? And I think it takes a lot of discipline to try to divorce yourself from what the stock is doing and say, okay, how's the thesis doing? And so that's something that we really try to remind people of as well. The other thing, Brian, I was just cracking up listening to you because I'm in agreement with you. I'm not criticizing, but like, I remember the same thing when people were saying that Tesla should have launched the Model Y ahead of the Model 3 because that's a bigger market. And I'm like, you want them to go through production hell on the larger mass market vehicle first and then go down market? Like, that would have been 1,000 times worse. But people who are just like number crunching in Excel, it's like, oh, bigger market, do that one first. It's like it's like the most simplistic just messed up way to do it. I completely agree with you. Like getting the 48 volt architecture down, all the new processes that they had to perfect for this, Cybertruck, which is going to be at a much smaller volume. Like try doing that at a smaller volume launch first, get that team like more capable, then build like the super complicated equipment that you're going to need for like a ridiculously mass market vehicle and roll that out. Like that's definitely the right way. So I just want to say I completely agree with your point of view on that, Brian.
So, we were talking about, oh, hold on. I'm not sharing the right screen here. I was looking at something. I thought I was sharing it. So, we're talking about looking out the thesis. And what do you guys think about this James Stevenson graph here, where he said, look, quarter is terrible. It's ugly. No doubt about it. But if you look at the growth of, this is obviously 12-month trailing 12 months. So it really only took that one quarter into perspective. But this is what's happened to Tesla sales. And so when people say the growth story is busted and it's get out now, the EVs, you're saying, Matt, that this is about their thesis, and your thesis is electric vehicles revolution is happening. Hans and I just did a show when we just showed that 31 countries in the world have now hit the 5% tipping point for electric vehicle new sales for all new cars being sold. And typically once you hit the 5%, it's an acceleration of growth for the next 3 years. The only two countries that have not shown that is the United States and South Korea. The United States hit the 5% 2 years ago, and they're not growing as fast as how all the other countries grew to 15% within 3 years. So, that's why I think that people who live in the US are kind of thinking, oh my God, the US sales is EV's dead, because I'm watching my domestic OEMs like GM and Ford and what they're saying and looking at their sales. And then they're looking at the uptake in the US is only 8% right now for new EVs, for electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles. But across the world, it's an unstoppable juggernaut. So what's your thoughts about when people say the growth story is busted, Tesla is doomed?
Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
Oh, I was just going to say, we've been hearing this since 2012 and it's never materialized. So one day they could be right. I don't believe today is that day. Matt?
Yeah.
So this guy's funny because North Korea sales hit 5%. 31 countries, not North Korea.
That would be concerning if we had high sales in North Korea. Yeah, no. So I don't. I definitely don't agree that this is like massive cause for concern. But like I do find it interesting. I've had a lot of conversations with the bears, and essentially what's played out over the last 18 months or so is very close to what some of the more reasonable bears out there, like Drew Dixon, have been saying, like, oh, there's not enough models and like EV demand's not going to take off. And like I'd imagine if you're a guy like Drew Dixon right now that's like used to covering the automotive market from like a traditional OEM standpoint, you frankly love your V6 and are just kind of one of those types of guys that loves the roar and feel of an engine. You're feeling like, okay, you've got this right. All these Tesla fans were just like a little too optimistic, and their projections, their hockey stick projections, were just like wild. Like I still think that even though he's been right in the short term, like you can't fight against the economics of BEVs being like a better option just strictly from cost. And then you also can't fight with the logic of like from an ownership perspective, it's so much better, than the ICE vehicle ownership experience, especially with the supercharger network. I kind of frankly understand why GM and Ford are having a harder time, because there's, it's just frankly a way higher price point for probably like less optimal ownership experience. But with Tesla in particular, you get like at a very slight premium, maybe, or potentially at a discount to an ICE car counterpart, a much better product, and that's just going to continue at some point, especially if you just follow the cost curves. And okay, battery costs are going to continue going down, and that is still the single highest cost component of these new vehicles. So when you get to the point where BEVs are a 10-15% discount to the comparable price of an ICE car, plus the operating costs are lower, like I don't know how you compare. And then if you add autonomy on top of that, It's like I don't see a real reasonable future where EVs don't continue to really gobble up market share and probably a lot more aggressively than they in the next 5 years than they have in the past 5 years.
So can I ask that question then? What are you expecting for margins of the panel here for the rest of the year? Because some people are saying, you just said it, right? It's unlikely we're going to hit 2 million at the end of this year. It's in order to do that in the next 3 quarters, you need to have 550,000 vehicles delivered for Tesla. It's going to be hard to do that. But FSD, maybe. Is your calculation, guys, that the FSD uptake could be significant enough to impact the margins, the energy, to impact the margins? Anything else, or what's your? I'm trying to move away from the ugly and now move into maybe the bad or good, depending on how you guys view this. Who wants to take this on first?
I'll take it first because mine's going to be quick. I think all of those are upsides, but as you know, I don't go heavy into earnings per share. I don't go into stock predictions. I stick with what I know. That's how I got to within 0.36% on production numbers. Tesla is confident that this FSD trial will result in subscriptions. For every 1% that takes it on a subscription basis after this, we're talking $2 million a month. So 10%, 20 million, and growing from there. That should have some impact, but there's a lot of shares to divide that revenue by to actually get a meaningful number. Megapack, as Herbert and I discussed in a show that's coming out tomorrow or the next day, the revenue on that isn't realized until it's substantially complete and then fully complete and activated. So there's a long tail of revenue on the Megapacks, making it look artificially less margin rich than it is over the short term. So they'll just keep growing as it expands.
Yeah, I think that, we really, I'm just excited to see where we end up this year with respect to SaaS revenue coming out of FSD. And there's, the timeline is still unknown. Right now, we're just in such a crazy vertical on the development of FSD that if we continue at this rate, we're definitely going to be at a place by the end of the year where the performance of the system is so good that Tesla just has a cash cow on its hands. And the only question is, how are they going to choose to monetize it? And so you start looking at milestones like, are they offering a per mile price, or are they breaking out different functionality and offering a la carte subscription options? Are they actually raising the purchase price of FSD? What are they doing to try and maximize usage of the system and maximize profit on the use of that system? But if it, that could take a little bit longer to materialize. We may hit somewhat of a slowdown and a hiccup again from here. And, maybe that pushes out from the end of this year into 2025, potentially even 2026 at the latest. But, from where I'm sitting line of sight, there is there's not even a snowball's chance in hell that FSD does not radically transform the profitability profile of the margins of Tesla in the next 3 years. And, from that standpoint, this is why I love being an engineer at this point in the market cycle, where I can say with near certainty what the leading, causal factors are going to be in the near term future. And I don't have to get the timing right on exactly when does it hit the bottom line. Like, I just know there are going to be some realities from not only a manufacturing standpoint, but from a software standpoint that no one else is really going to be able to offer any meaningful competition to. Because even if someone else solved it, no one has been shipping the hardware 3 equivalent vehicles into the market, that they have this installed base of hardware that's capable of earning these type of SaaS revenues. And I'm not even talking about robotaxis. I'm just talking about level 2, potentially even level 3 software as a service, self-driving features that people will absolutely pay money for as long as Tesla is willing to sell it to them at a price that they find reasonable, which I think Tesla absolutely will do, as long as Tesla doesn't feel like it's adding significant legal risk to them overall. And so, that's just the lay of the land. And for people who want to quibble about other like short-term things, I don't know what to tell them. And then the other thing is just don't forget how much foresight Elon has. 2014, he's building the world's biggest friggin' battery plant in Sparks, Nevada. And that was because he knew exactly what Tesla was going to be able to do, from there until 2020. And all of that was needed. The complexity of the supply chain that is necessary to really adequately prepare for the launch of the next generation platform, robotaxi or no, is such a gargantuan undertaking that right now there is so much work that's going on behind the scenes that no one who doesn't work in supply chain, no one who doesn't work in manufacturing will even begin to fathom that you can't just, snap your fingers and materialize a multi-million unit run rate vehicle out of thin air. And all of that is happening. It's going to be pretty interesting to see, those first next generation vehicles rolling off the line probably sometime next year from Austin. And that's when we'll really get some insight into that. But all of those things are just really huge issues that people just don't understand. And it's going to be transformative to margins and profitability. And this is a great time to be, when no one believes it, when the stock is beaten down, and honestly, like the stock is holding up great compared to, the miss that we saw in deliveries. So, I think that maybe I'm selling it short. Maybe a lot more people kind of understand this than
That's
all
one
of the
thing.
noise in the media, would make it seem like.
Yeah, so that's the next question I want to ask you guys is, obviously the stock fell the last month, and then this news came out, shocked everybody, but the stock only fell 5%. So it was already built in. But is FSD in some way causing a floor for the stock? Wanted to share with us and get your opinion, Matt, on this, because I've asked the others already this. I don't know if you saw this. Omar said this, right? In the future, every car will be self-driving electric. Okay? Do you believe that? Every car will be self-driving electric. Every car Tesla makes is self-driving and electric. Everyone, even the past cars, can be turned into self-driving. And they're the world leader in EV sales. As robot cars eat the auto market, right? Tesla will be the overwhelming benefactor. At some point, you're not going to buy an ICE car, a gas car. You're going to buy an electric vehicle car. And at some point, you're not going to buy a car that's not robotaxi ready or future potential in the future. So Elon replied saying, yeah, should be obvious. Yet few people are realizing this. So if you're an ICE manufacturer, if you're, Ford or GM and others, and you're creating these cars, and if you don't, you're struggling to create an electric vehicle, but if you can't create an electric vehicle that can then be self-driving, so then Elon then replied again to that same tweet and says, we will license the tech to other car companies. So this FSD version 12, we're now getting to the good part. We're now talking about the good we talked about the ugly, a little bit of the bad. We'll keep going back to the bad. But the good part is that could there not be a partnership with licensing of FSD, especially now the 12.3.3 it's just making everybody excited because you can see how incredible the step change increase was. Do you factor that in, Matt? Have you given, and you have any guesses on that at all? Or is this one of those things that are just, you don't want to guess on at all?
So I have in the past, maybe 3-4 years ago, actually it was 4 years ago, 2020, I started doing some, kind of analysis of what if they were licensing. To me, I think the thing that makes the most amount of sense, their powertrain is better, like their drive unit, the batteries, their HVAC system, all of that is better than what the incumbents have. Plus, you need the same camera suite and FSD chip. So why not license essentially the entire like skateboard powertrain plus like tech experience to other car companies and have them, do different styling around there. To me, that's something that's consistent with the mission, and would give the the incumbents basically just the freedom to kind of choose styling and any other features that their customers might like. That a lot of people don't like the minimalist interior of the Tesla. I think they should have another option that's delivers just as much on the performance and other capabilities of the Tesla that we really like. Maybe not every EV needs a fart mode, because like some people are just little stiff and don't like that. So I think giving the licensing essentially the tech that Tesla is so far advanced on to other car makers makes sense. What I've always been skeptical of is, will they have the humility to kind of recognize that, yeah, hey, you are way ahead of us on powertrain design and HVAC and watt hours per mile and all these metrics that really matter. So I'm not sure that they will do it. The FSD licensing, I think, is a more reasonable. You could basically just have those cameras. Yeah, I'm sure that it's a little bit more nuanced than this, but you could essentially design a car to have those cameras placed and essentially just have the chip be sold. So the hardware cost is extremely low, and maybe you license it from Tesla for, I don't know, $7,000, and you sell it to your customers for 10 or something like that. I think that's a business that does make a fair amount of sense. The reason I don't model it though is because by the time there's an agreement reached and they try to work it into a new model year, we're probably talking about 2028 at this point if they go forward now. And at that point, like, our robotaxi is going to be launched. I don't know. Like, I think it's so far in the future that there's things that are probably a little closer to being impactful to earnings, that I think just the lag in their design cycle for the incumbent OEMs makes it less interesting to me, at least in the short term. I did also want to touch on, Herbert, your question earlier about, is FSD basically going to help with earnings this year? Bradford and I did a video about that maybe a week or two ago. And the kind of short answer we came up with is we're assuming reasonably somewhere in between aggressive and modest pricing or increases in take rate, both on the subscription side mostly, and also a little bit on the upfront purchase price. And it just doesn't get to the point where it's like pushing it, say, above $3 per share, which I think you'd need to have this year for FSD to really be a shocker that really helps to boost the stock. So what I'm seeing instead is I think more people are going to opt for subscriptions, and that's more of a slow burn where as the tech gets better, and especially as it launches in Europe in Q1 and in China after that, I think you're going to just have like natural expansion and take rate just because you're offering the service in more territories now. Plus, we know it's going to continue to get better along that timeline. Plus, just as the subscriptions or the free trials take off, I think you're just going to continue to see an increased take rate of the entire fleet. And so I think that's going to really accelerate the growth rate, the earnings growth rate in 25 and 26 beyond what maybe the Gary Blacks of the world and the people who are kind of assuming static take rates, and that there's no big surprise there. I kind of agree there's no big surprise in 24, but I think it really starts to accelerate just as you go from like the model that I have right now assumes there's around 160,000 FSD subscribers by the end of the year. And then that increases to, I've lost my place in my model here.
How much is the 12,000 one-time purchase?
So I'm assuming that stays for the most part, like more or less consistent. So here, let me move my screen over. So like right now, I assume for Q1, for example, that it's a 7% take rate on vehicles that are delivered that quarter, but then a 2% subscription rate. But that 2% is global across the entire fleet of customers who did not buy FSD at the time of purchase. So that, as the cumulative Tesla fleet grows, and then your take rate on subscriptions goes from 2 to 5 to I think in the long run here, I was just making a couple changes to like 10%, I think, by 2026. I've got it at 7.5% actually. And so then you're getting to the point where your take rates, your subscription revenue is a lot more impactful. So
this is where I'm gonna I just to give it a consideration. I have a couple friends who both asked me, and we talked about it. Should you buy it, or should you do subscription? They both decided to buy it. because now that they have higher confidence that robotaxi is happening, they want to have it owned as opposed to a subscription. Just a couple of points there, that as people are becoming more confidence that this is really going to become robotaxi, more people will end up buying straight out the price.
And just for one piece of reference, I'm really going to be shocked if we don't see Tesla actually begin raising those outright purchase prices. You know, the better the quality of the system gets, the more they'll raise the purchase prices and potentially then lower the subscription prices. That way, you know, they can lock in that more recurring SaaS type revenue.
Yeah, I do find it surprising. I've heard more people commenting that Tesla should lower the price of the FSD purchase so that you can increase take rate. And I'm like, we've stuck with this strategy for this long, and we're, you know, now at this point where autonomy finally seems reasonable. I don't think this is actually the right time to try to increase short-term, you know, earnings performance by lowering to like $8,000 or something like that. To me, as a long-term investor, it makes a whole lot more sense to say no. Like, you can if you want to try it, you can rent right now for $199 a month, or subscribe right now for $199 a month, but we will be raising prices on you, and you like, you don't have any recourse on that. And we're also like, when it becomes very clear that robo taxis are around the corner, and like the car actually does work very close to like an L4 L5 type system, like I'm quite certain that the subscription price is going to increase, and definitely the purchase price will definitely be higher than $12,000 at that point.
Depends on what. I asked this question to many people. I have not asked you this. Why did they introduce the 1 month free trial now? And of course, a year ago, Elon did say we will introduce a 1 month free trial when it's easier. It's like a very comfortable drive, not just safer. And that is exactly what has happened. But some people are saying, did he do it because of improving the margin for this year, or did it do it because they needed data? The more people who are using FSD now that they're no longer compute constrained, can find more of these edge cases. And so you're saying that, well, even the FSD uptake is not going to impact the margins that much, not materially. Then why did they do it now? What's the reason?
Well, I think it is going to impact the margins. So I do think there's probably a couple different things going on. One, the data, absolutely. That's like very clearly helpful, especially like you get the real world data with like interventions. That's more valuable than all the simulation stuff or shadow mode. So that's certainly real. Two, I think this is a bad quarter, and so it might be nice to have a little bit of good news. Now, I know Elon's much more focused on the long term than the short term, but he's not concerned with the short term. That's why they had a delivery wave to begin with, because they didn't want their quarters to be horrible. So they always rushed to try to get as many deliveries at the end of the quarter. So to say Elon doesn't care at all about the short term is not right in my mind. But you know, I think it probably would have been a little bit better, I think, to wait for 12.3 to get just a little bit better, so that you like really wow people. Because I was driving it again today, and it's like, you know, it's pretty consistently just way too cautious at these unprotected lefts where I've got to stop at a stop sign. I'm always missing the first 1 or 2 gaps at least where it would have been safe to turn, and it's just like a little too slow. I think it'd be like that alone might put some people who are on the fence to just say, you know what, I don't really like this, it's not worth it. And then if they fix that problem 3 months from now, they might not be inclined to try again. So I do think it probably would have been slightly better from a take rate perspective in the long run to wait until this was just like slightly more refined than you know, version 12 currently is. But I'm not going to sit here and claim that I've got smarter than Elon Musk syndrome and putting all the different pieces of this equation together. I'm not like, it's not a strongly held belief that they should have waited.
So I would bring up a couple things. I did want to jump back quite a bit and say that on the skateboards, that's a great idea that's been tried many times by many manufacturers. And for a bunch of reasons, it doesn't work. The biggest is just integration. Getting engineers at one company on the same page is hard enough without having engineers from multiple companies. And when you try to make a one-size-fits-all situation, like a skateboard, it ends up not fitting anyone very well. On the cars generally, the thing with internal combustion is we've maxed out what we can do in terms of efficiency and cost savings. There's not a lot of room left to cut costs, and it shows. efficiency is kind of peaked. It's a technology that's over 100 years into its development, where with electric drivetrains with batteries, the costs are still falling dramatically, and it's just a matter of mere years until the idea of buying internal combustion is lunacy. Why would you pay extra so you can get a car to pay extra? On the FSD purchase versus subscription, a huge benefit I see. I'm of the camp rent, in part because I don't have 12 grand, and in part because I know a lot of people aren't sure if they're going to keep their car for 60 months. So the idea is, with a subscription, you get to book 100% of the revenue when the month ends, don't you? You've already delivered the thing that was paid for. So for Tesla, that's kind of a win in that regard. And I saw a comment earlier, Wall Street loves recurring revenue. And I believe that to be true. In a company, I'd like to see more recurring revenue. It's a faucet of cash that continues running long after you've done the work. The comments I'm seeing over the last few weeks, but especially over the last day, are negative. And you could look at them in different ways. You could say it's a short position that makes them, negative. They're negative because they're a competitor. They're negative because they're a hater. But really, I like to look at all of them as a whole because they are a bunch of that. So
Please,
that's what
it's a family show.
No, as the shorts as a whole. What do you mean? I don't understand.
Pride is bride. I love it. Pride is bride. There you go. Pride is bride. Okay, well let's talk about the good news, right? So we talked about a lot of ugly at the beginning, a lot of bad. We're admitting that it's bad. We're admitting that it was ugly. The good news, though, right? So who else thinks of it this way? I'm sure you do, right? So we have a car company, and this car company started this quarter at Q1 reporting on energy. And so it's no longer a car company. It's not a car company, an energy company. Energy came in very strong, 9% revenue last year, very good margins. It's going to go really well this year. They actually broke ground on mega pack factory in Shanghai. So it's an energy company, and that's growing, and that's looking good. I'm pretty sure they're going to announce another mega pack factory sometime the end of this year, because you've got the Shanghai moving along nicely. Then you've got FSD version 12.3. So that's a good news. Everybody's really excited about that. You can see the confidence from not only Elon, but the other directors of AIs and the Autopilot team. And then you've seen just a barrage of people testing out 12.3.3, shocked at how good it is. So at least we know that it's on its way and it's working well. And then you've got the bot. Incredible progress there. Things are looking really good. And it's very promising. Look how fast they announced that they were going to do the bot 2 years later, and now they're talking about shipping some number of Optimus next year. So, you know what I mean? Like, you look at it as a car company, it was ugly. But if you look at it as a whole, how can you not be even more excited? Because all of these businesses that, you know how we used to say that these are option calls, meaning if one of them succeeds, we'll be so happy. It looks like everything that they're touching might succeed. Some people are questioning whether or not Tesla is an AI company succeeding. There's questions about Dojo being delayed. But hey, didn't they just announce they're no longer compute constrained for FSD? Where did that come from? Is it just the NVIDIA purchases? Or maybe Dojo's starting to move, maybe not as fast as they expected, but it's moving. So this is like the fifth business that they're going to get into, AI and Dojo. But how do you guys see this? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll take the energy
Yeah.
piece of it. Actually, I think at a high level, aside from just energy, you look at 4680 and Dojo and energy. Like all these things have frankly taken longer to ramp than maybe most of the bulls thought a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
So I think it is reasonable to say that like these are not like call options, let's say, that are like going to save the day for earnings this year or probably even next year. I was just doing a quick look at my model while you were talking there, Herbert, and the energy gross margin with the 4 gigawatt hours that they delivered in Q1 is going to be roughly on par with the margin from FSD, at least as I'm calculating it. So like that's maybe a good way to think about it. And those, if you think of like this is maybe an interesting way to frame Tesla as an investment opportunity. You've got like the existing automotive business, which is like what everyone's talking about, which is completely beat up right now. Then you've got like, let's just call it roughly $450-500 million of gross margin, which is on the FSD side between subscriptions and outright take rates in Q1. Imagine how quickly that's going to be growing with the increase in capabilities, with the free trials, with the fact that you can market it to your existing fleet. And then you've got roughly the same $450-500 million of gross margin right now in Q1 on the energy side. Imagine how quickly that's going to be ramping up going forward. So you've got like $1 billion of gross margin for a company that's doing, total gross margin of 4.2 billion last quarter. And like the growth rate of the margin on both energy and FSD is going to like that's what really matters. And all Wall Street's focused on is deliveries. Like, oh no. So like it will take some time. Like Lathrop's not ramped fully at 40 gigawatt hours right now. A lot of the other stuff has not like ramped up to scale yet. But like this is very meaningful, and the runway for energy is extremely long. I've been following what's going on in the grid. For those of you who don't know, like I worked in the energy space. I managed wind farms and other power plants, and like the stuff going on in the energy space right now is absolutely wild. Energy like prices are like extremely volatile and extremely high, way higher than I thought they would be. Demand, especially from data centers, is just like through the roof, and customers are increasingly demanding that their power be both clean, so like solar and wind, but also firm, so it's available when they need it. And if you're a data center, you can't just be running 30% of the time because that's when your solar is around. So like this is like an extremely hard problem that everyone is very much focused on right now. And I think demand for mega packs and for any stationary storage, to be honest with you, is going to be like essentially as much as they can produce for the foreseeable future. So I'm extremely optimistic about this, but it will take some time to I think pan out.
This is actually something I've been wanting to actually get to ask you for a little while, Matt. Do you see any pathway from here to cut through the red tape on the interconnect process so that, it seems like we can make the things that solve the problems that we're having faster than we can do the paperwork necessary to allow the solutions to be implemented?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the interconnect queue has just grown. I mean, a couple, maybe 5 years ago, it was like 2 or 3 years. Now it's pretty much 5 years. So, I mean, if you're a new data center trying to connect and you need power right now, you like waiting 5 years is not a realistic option. But that's like, frankly, just with the bureaucratic process that was set up a long time ago. And then now you've got this flood of very small solar and wind projects coming in, and just like the number of projects in the queue is way bigger than these process was designed for. So there are some things coming. So FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, is actually working on an interconnect reform, which probably should be dropping in the next year or two. But then it goes to the ISOs to implement new rules, which will take multiple years before those are implemented, let alone like in place for new projects trying to interconnect. So I think we're talking about 2030 at the earliest before there's any sort of interconnect reform. So what that puts project developers in the position of needing to figure out now is, okay, how do I handle this immediate need that I have? And one way you can do that is just by going off grid, essentially, or you have your backup power on site. So if you're like a commercial or industrial customer, you can actually just buy a mega pack and put it behind the meter and use that as a way to kind of avoid the interconnect process. It's a little more complicated to do it that way, and frankly, it's a lot more expensive to try to self-generate than to just buy from the grid. But I think that that arithmetic is going to be changing over the years, just because solar is extremely cheap, and those costs are only coming down, and utility costs are only going up, and the time to interconnect is only going up. So I'm really a fan of what's called distributed energy resources, or DERs, depending on how much of a nerd you are. But there's not a solution that's completely checking the box for every single use case right now. But I think increasingly that's, more companies are going to take their energy needs into their own hands.
Is there a scale at which, like, imagine you're a data center and you want to just say, screw it, I'm not waiting for the grid, I'm just going to build my own thing. Like, how much annual power do you need to demand in order for it to make sense to just go ahead and put in a field of solar panels and, potentially some wind turbines and a big old, you know, a pack of mega packs?
It's tricky. I mean, and frankly, most won't go that route because one, you need to have the land for it. Two, then you need to like have an on-hand energy expert to like essentially manage that. And if you're just some plastic extrusion company just frustrated with the interconnect process, there's probably a better way to go around about it than trying to develop your own project behind the meter. Essentially, there are some solutions that are a little quicker to get off the shelf. Bloom Energy's one, but that uses natural gas. They've got a very compact, energy dense, and extremely efficient use case. But frankly, we haven't seen a lot of adoption of their technology. This news kind of flew under the radar a little bit, but Amazon actually announced a deal with a nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania for 1 gigawatt essentially of space, where they're going to essentially be building their data centers on site at this power plant, which otherwise may have been decommissioned. And they're just, as they're building up new data centers, they're going to keep adding until they get to like roughly 1 gigawatt. So that's a pretty wild situation. And I mean, the load profile for nuclear power plants is basically that they're always running and always at maximum capacity. And then when they have to get shut down every year or two for like refueling and maintenance and that sort of thing, it's just down. So like those data centers are going to have to be down for multiple weeks. And so like that, these are the sort of trade-offs that companies are going to have to make. They'll be like, okay, I can get clean, firm power if I just site my data center on a nuclear campus. But then I'm going to have to like not use these for weeks on end. Like it's just when maintenance inevitably needs to be done on these, unless you can somehow backfill with power from the grid. But then that creates a massive demand charge on your utility bill that would be very hard to overcome. So it's complicated.
Let's get back to the main topic of the good, bad, and ugly. Final comments, thoughts about what's happening with Tesla stock. Let's go with you, Brian, first.
I see this as a temporary setback, but of course I would. The reason I bought my shares in 2019 was because I was able to zoom out and see things that other people did not. I could see the just a dirt field that Lynette Lopez loved to make fun of as a project very real and very much on the way to completion. I could see the ramp in Fremont getting ironed out. I hadn't seen the truck yet. FSD was still too far on the horizon, but from what I could see, I had confidence. Over the years, I've added some more shares, and I still today see things that a lot of Wall Street analysts don't. But a lot of Wall Street analysts don't care about the 10-year horizon or the 5-year horizon or the 6-month horizon. They just need you to trade. Keep trading because that's how I get paid. And that is a perverse incentive when they're getting paid, huge bonuses while losing your money, while not looking out for your interests. It's crazy. So between Megapack, which is the least exciting, but a huge opportunity. It's not exciting. It's boxes sitting next to a windmill. That is huge, and that is, as far as I'm concerned, a done deal. Then you've got FSD, Autonomy, Robotaxi, Dojo, Bot. Those are all trillion-dollar moonshots. I look at companies like NVIDIA and say, they are great, they're doing great work, but if Dojo chip works as expected, they're going to lose one customer and probably a whole bunch more, and other people will catch up. To me, I don't see another company with the same kind of 10-year prospects that are visible to me today as I see with Tesla, and I'm excited.
Very nicely done. Hans?
Yeah, this was something I actually wanted to say yesterday in the Cyber Bulls episode, but got my computer was acting up, and so ended up dropping out of the space for a few minutes. Um, Basically, to follow on what you said, Brian, the question that you asked yesterday, Herbert, was, would you rather have been an investor in 2019 or would you rather be an investor now with the setup today? And it was unanimous. Everyone else on the Cyberbulls panel yesterday said 2019. And as an engineer, to me, it's no questions asked today.
Exactly.
What we're looking at in FSD and then the implications of that for Tesla bot are literally humanity scale history altering things. And no one is in a better position to capitalize on these two incredible secular trends that artificial intelligence is going to transform the economy in 100 ways. And knowledge work is kind of the forefront of where that is right now. But when it starts doing real work in the real world that saves real people real time, that's what the economy is. It is the mechanism by which humans allocate time that is scarce to actually be productive and meet the needs of the people around us. And so, yeah, we're talking about stuff that can break the way that we think about labor, the way that we think about time, the way that we think about work. And, it's going to be something that takes part of the reason that I can say that, today I would rather be in the stock today is because, in 2019, my time horizons were 5 to 10 years. I'm still young. My time horizons are still 5 to 10 years. And that 5 to 10 year time horizon looks brighter from where I'm standing in 2024. From 2024 to 2034 is more exciting than 2019 to 2029, which was exciting, but today is more exciting.
Wow, both of you guys have been incredibly articulate. Let's see what Matt says.
We'll bring down the average of the group. Yeah, so I mean, the bad, I think we covered it. Like this is a horrible production and delivery report. The outlook for the rest of this year is in question. So there's no doubt about it that like we're in for some rocky period, and I don't think there's some magic pill that's gonna like save the day for earnings for the rest of this year. But whatever, oh gosh, Farzad. Thanks for derailing it, Farzad. I tried to go through it after I saw that comment, and I couldn't keep my train of thought. But so I've been talking a lot about FSD, even while I've been kind of critical of of production and deliveries on Twitter lately. And I've seen a lot. I don't know if you guys have seen like that meme of like Tesla investors just like doing the like whatever that super tape is of like FSD, and like it's like whatever the real problems are, like FSD solves it. So like that's this criticism that's going around right now is just that like we're turning off our brains and we're just saying like it's going to be solved by FSD, so we don't need to worry about like the actual problems that the company has. And that's like a fair criticism, but you can't convince me that solving the cheapest to manufacture and operate vehicles that can operate operate as robotaxis is not extremely valuable. And even if you just think for whatever reason they can't be robotaxis, it's just like the world's best ADAS system, you can't convince me that that's not extremely valuable. So like sure, I'll take that on the chin when like people say that I'm just some like crazy optimist that thinks FSD is going to solve everything. But when you do the first principles thinking on Tesla's approach and how different it is from everyone else's, and the data advantage they have and the fleet advantage that they have of cars that they can sell back to, like that's extremely valuable. And I don't care if anyone disagrees. Like you can't convince me that it's not.
It reminds me of the midwit meme that, there's FSD solves this is the two ends of the distribution. And then no FSD is the midwit position.
Yeah, that's so true. Like like the James Down was like the smartest person, and he's just like, oh, like FSD is like amazing, and like he understands the technical reasons why, but like you don't have to be that smart to get it. But like a bunch of people in the middle of the distribution, like you're saying, Hans, are just like who think they're a lot more sophisticated than they actually are. Just like, well, it doesn't matter because margins are bad and demand is falling. Like, okay.
Okay, well, so let's summarize this. I think for me, my answer would be just simply that things can change incredibly quickly. We were here about a year ago, 6 months ago, where everybody was doom and gloom, thought that Tesla was dead in the next 6 months, and then everything just turned around and improved. Yes, the going opinion by everybody, even those in the panel, that it's going to be a down year. It's going to be a down year, but things can change very quickly. So we'll see what happens. Be fun to watch. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We do this weekly live stream on all 3 of our channels. Thank you for joining us, Matt. You are, despite what Farzad said, you're a breath of fresh air. Loved your opinions. You're fantastic. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you. See you soon. Bye, everybody.